I'd say that worked out really well. I'm gonna pack things up real quick and just kind of start walking down these trails and just kind of wander around and see what else we can find. One of the best things about woodland photography is just the actual exploration of it all, just wandering around. No agenda. That's the best agenda, I think. So the ambient light is building quickly, starting to look more and more promising with each minute that passes by. You definitely start to see some color coming in the sky. I'm just hoping that it's going to be able to cast enough warm light to kind of to coat this this coastline with the warm light that I'm envisioning. We've got maybe about 20 more minutes right now before the sun comes up. Just kind of playing with my different settings right now. I'm going to be using f11, ISO, maybe 500, and I'm going to try and get a little bit of movement in the water. Unfortunately, I know I mentioned this a minute ago, it's nowhere really close to high tide. In the water, there's not a whole lot of movement in it, but I'm going to try and show a little bit. There's a rock out there where there is some waves kind of splashing on it. That's kind of in the mid-ground of my composition. But I'm going to try and use somewhat of a slower shutter speed, but not too slow, because I don't want the water to look like glass. I want it to show that the water is actually moving. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to refine this, and hopefully the conditions continue to materialize as they have been thus far. So the conditions are much better today than they were the last time I was here. As you can see, there's plenty of color in the sky out there. There's plenty of clouds. There's a lot of interest. There's a lot of mood. These are actually the kind of photos that I like the most. This is kind of moody, dramatic, dark, almost kind of somber images. So I really like these conditions right now. I'm doing just a 2-shot focus stack, one for the foreground and one for these rocks out in the midground. And at f11, that's going to be enough to get my foreground in focus, and focusing on the rocks in the midground, we'll be able to get everything else in focus out to infinity. I'm at a shutter speed of, let's see, what am I at right now? Half a second, and that's giving me a good enough exposure, but there's a lot of great color in the sky out there in the background. So getting pretty excited with the way all this is starting to come together. I don't think I need to bracket this scene, but I'm going to, just in case, just to be safe, just a 3-shot bracket, 2 stops apart, or 2 stops between each bracket, just in case I need the additional dynamic range when I go to post-process these images. That way I have them. Perfect. And then that was the foreground shot. This will be the mid-ground shot. And I always like to autofocus, throw it in manual, and then just kind of perfect it. And I use focus peaking. I always leave the focus peaking highlighted red. It's easier for me to see. And I find that that's the best way to get the sharpest images. I think autofocus will definitely get you in the zone, but I think you can usually refine it just a touch by applying a little bit of manual focusing. But if you don't use focus peaking, definitely test that out. I encourage you to turn that on. I don't have the best eyes out there, and focus peaking definitely helps me to try and to get those razor sharp in focus images. So there's the composition I have right now. I really like the curvature of the coastline right through here. I was just kind of like that upside down U shape. And then I have that landmass out in the background there, kind of positioned perfectly right in the middle of this. And I'm hoping that when the sun rises, it's gonna throw a lot of that golden, soft, warm light all along the coastline right through here and kind of light all of this up and add a little bit of color in the sky. So that's the plan. That's what I'm hoping will happen. I'm not 100% sure. I'm afraid that the best color might have faded, but we can still hope for a lot of that warm light to light up the coastline here, because that's really gonna kind of bring the composition together. So it's about 5 minutes until sunrise. Look, a mess right now. I don't think we're going to get a lot of color in the sky, but I did get some kind of that blue hour twilight color. It's one of my favorite times to shoot sunrise is actually before the sun even breaches the horizon, because that's when you really get a lot of those magentas and those kind of purple tones. There wasn't a ton of it, but it definitely captured some of them, especially when you kind of underexpose it a little bit. It really brings out those tones. So I definitely got a couple of those images. Now I'm just kind of hoping that when the sun does break the horizon, that it's able to get through whatever clouds happen to be sitting there, that's able to kind of light up the actual landscape. So we'll see what happens here in the next few minutes. It might be one of those scenarios where the sun rises and then you don't actually see any kind of light for maybe 10, 15, sometimes 20 minutes later, because it's got to get above whatever kind of a cloud bank happens to be out there. You can see, well, let me turn the exposure down a little bit. You can see there's definitely some color coming in the sky right there, which could not be in a more opportune location right there. When I first got into landscape photography and I started to shoot sunrise shoots, I would just take a few photos. I would take one photo, at one moment, take another photo, maybe 15 minutes later, until the sun rose. But at the end of the sunset shoot or sunrise shoot, I would be left with maybe 15 or 20 images. But now I shoot just constantly throughout the entire sunrise or sunset, almost where I end up with like 50 or 60 images, because you never know when the peak of the color, the peak of the light, or the best clouds are going to be in the right position. It could happen at any moment. So if you just shoot through the entire event, keep shooting and shooting and shooting, that way you can secure that the likelihood that you're going to capture the best image possible at that particular location at that particular moment, those odds are greatly increased with the more images you take. So I always shoot through the entire event, because you just never know what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. Because most of the time, in my opinion, the best images aren't right when the sun comes up. Man, the conditions are really, really starting to come together. This is super exciting. There's just enough color out there, and it's all like in the perfect position, which happens to be right over there. So I couldn't be more excited. I'm so glad I did come to this location. I almost went to a different spot that had a completely different composition, where I was shooting in a completely opposite direction, because I thought that might be a little bit more conducive for the overcast conditions that were expected this morning. But much like there's been a theme this entire week in Acadia, though the cloud forecast has been completely off. I mean, it's still somewhat overcast, but nothing to what the forecast was saying. So these conditions are absolutely fantastic. I love the way this is all coming together. All right, I would say that the sun has completely cleared that deck of clouds that were on the horizon. It's like this kind of like a strip of haze, or I guess clouds that are in front of the sun. It's just kind of diffusing the light. It's making it really, really soft, which is nice. I think soft light is always much, much better than really harsh light, or I should say full light. Just making some final adjustments to my settings now that the light is changing very rapidly. Getting everything dialed in, still doing that two shot focus stack, one for the mid-ground out there and one for the foreground right here, but you can really start to see it light up now. I'm going to go ahead and take a bunch of these photos. Yeah, here we go. Here it is. It's a beautiful thing. Greatest hobby in the world, in my opinion. I'm not using any kind of filters or anything, no polarizer. I wouldn't mind putting a polarizer on right now, but the light's changing too fast. I don't want to miss it. I don't think it would do a whole lot. It'd probably reduce a little bit of that reflection off of the water. Maybe if I grab a couple more of these and I'll throw the polarizer on just to see if that'll refine the overall image just a little bit more. All right, let's see how quick we can do this without dropping this, smashing it all over the ground. There's a very specific way this thing has to go on, and I don't think I've ever gotten it on right the very first time, and I think I might have just done it. And the fact that I was recording it when it happened is amazing. Everything's always harder on camera. Let's see. Okay, it's doing something. It's nothing dramatic. And the good light's still here. That kind of soft diffused cloud bank that's just right in front of the sun is really helping to kind of keep this light in check and not let it start to kind of get blown out a little bit. Just keep it real soft, which is nice. One more image for the background, for the midground. Man, these conditions just really came together. My expectations were not that high for this shoot, but the fact that it all came together the way it did could not make me more giddy than I am right now. So this is my favorite image from this morning shoot. This is one of the blue hour images. Even though the sun hasn't rose at this particular moment, you can still see a lot of the ambient light catching the cliffside on the left side of the photograph. And this image has all the dramatic clouds in the sky along with the most colorful skies as well. And I really enjoy how the clouds in the upper right hand corner seem to mimic the cliffs on the bottom right hand corner as well. So I think the good light or the best light is probably over at this point. A lot of the clouds that were the real interest in the background have moved on to another location, and I think it's probably time to pack things up and see if there is something else on the island to capture, which I know there absolutely is. But this worked out way better than I originally had thought. I had pretty low expectations going into today, but I think I absolutely got at least one great image. I think I got a good blue hour image. I think I got a good golden hour image. And my goal is always to come away with one keeper. So to be able to come away with what I believe is two keepers, I'm pretty certain those are the numbers. That's a great way to start my second to the last day in Acadia National Park. I absolutely love this place. So I'm going to pack things up, head inland a little bit more, and chase some of that fall color that is just, I don't know if it's peaking right now, but it looks pretty brilliant to me, so I'm super excited about it. And I found another area that's there's a little trail nestled in these woods where the fall color is really popping right now. I spent a little bit of time there last night, and I'm pretty excited to get back there. So pick this up here in just a few moments. The autumn leaves in this area, in my opinion, from what I'm used to in North Carolina, these are absolutely exploding. They're beautiful. I found this area. It's like this kind of a little bit of a marshy area, and there's some kind of looks like some old fallen trees that have died, I guess. in this swamp area, and there's brilliant autumn trees that are just kind of outlining it. So you kind of got the swamp in the foreground, and then the dead trees, and then it leads up to the autumn leaves in the background, and it's just absolutely spectacular. It's really, really windy out here though, so I'm really having to be cognizant of the actual shutter speed I'm using. Right now I'm at 1/250th of a second, f11, ISO 640, because for me the utmost importance is keeping those leaves perfectly sharp. I don't want any kind of motion blur in them at all. I want them to be razor sharp. So having to use a really fast shutter speed to kind of freeze that action. Now, as you can tell, I have my tripod at maximum altitude. It's extended all the way because there's a lot of kind of vegetation here in the foreground, and I want to be able to shoot over it in order to capture the scene without the kind of distracting elements blowing in the foreground. At first I thought it'd be kind of cool with the shallow depth of field to throw the foreground out of focus, but it just looked a little bit too chaotic, a little bit too busy. I'm using my longest lens, which is the 55-200, which I believe is a full frame equivalent of roughly a 70-300, and I'm zoomed all the way out at 55 millimeters or 70 millimeters on a full frame. And I like to use a longer lens in woodland scenes because it just compresses everything together. You don't get as much space between those trees, so you're able to kind of pull the scene together and make the woods appear even more dense than they actually are. One of my favorite things about this scene is there's no little, I guess, holes in the woods where there's kind of real bright highlights or the bluish sky behind the trees are kind of popping through. Those are just always seem like big distractions for me. So this scene is so thick back there that it's just a blanket of autumn leaves that you can't see anything through it. It's just absolutely fantastic. I really like the way this one is coming out. This is the first location that I stopped at in these woods. So what a fantastic start to the morning. Such a simple scene, but that light is coming through the side, and it's just showing the structure of the trunks. All of the trees have this nice warm side light. Everything is side lit right now, and it just adds a lot of three-dimension, and it's how you kind of get away from that overly flat look, is with some good subdued soft light. And the light right now is on the other side of this mountain behind me, so it's just creeping over it right now, and it's just really, really soft and diffused light, and it's just really pulling this entire scene together. I'm not sure how easy it is to see this, but hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of exactly what the overall composition is. I have this all just off center in the foreground, and then I also have that one as well, and then you kind of have this like marshy area right through there, and it's just the lighting on it is just absolutely fantastic, as you can see right there. I'd say that worked out really well. I'm going to pack things up real quick and just kind of start walking down these trails and just kind of wander around and see what else we can find. One of the best things about woodland photography is just the actual exploration of it all, just wandering around, no agenda. That's the best agenda, I think. I really love the story being told in this image. You have the vibrant, full of life trees in the background contrasting against the toppled over and dead tree in the foreground. But besides the vibrant colors and the story being told, this image is all about the light for me. I love that soft diffused light that's coming through the upper right hand corner of the frame that's just giving a lot of the tree trunks in the background that three-dimensional shape, but especially the dead tree in the foreground. So I'm just wandering around right now. The light's really good. There's a lot of nice, subtle, real diffused side light, which is illuminating all the sides of these trees, which really brings them to life, adds that three-dimensional quality. So I'm really just looking for some kind of pockets of light, some dappled light, trying to find areas where there might be some light rays coming through, and some just really interesting trees that can frame up an interesting subject. Woodland photography is, at least from a compositional perspective, is not the easiest thing in the world to do. I'm always trying to find the most simplistic way to, I guess, compose a scene. But the first thing I'm always trying to do is just figure out exactly, what's the main subject. So that's what I'm looking for right now. Just something that really catches my eye, and then I'll try and build a composition around that main subject. I just found this nice little intimate scene. There's this tiny little bridge along this path that had the light just kind of dancing right on it. I tried to set up the camera real quick to film it, but the light was in and out so fast over and over again, I was afraid I was going to miss the opportunity, so I went ahead and captured it. But nice, quiet, quaint, very intimate scene. It really exudes that autumn feel. So I'm pretty happy with the way that I think that one will turn out. So the light's starting to get a little bit brighter now that the sun is getting higher. I think there's still a little bit left as far as usable light. I'm going to wander around just a little bit more, see if there's anything else that I can find. But I will wrap this video up now. So I really do hope you enjoyed this week's video. If you did enjoy it, if you could give it that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. And as always, I really do appreciate you watching this week's video, and I will see you all next Wednesday. Bye.